Have you ever caught your cat suddenly freezing in place, eyes wide open, staring intensely at a completely empty corner of the wall? No people, no obvious movement, no sound that you can hear. And yet, your cat is focused as if it has just discovered a secret humanity hasn't even updated itself on yet. Honestly, the first time I saw my cat do this around midnight, I stood still for a few seconds and asked myself one very serious question. Wait, what is it looking at? And I believe if you've ever had a cat, you've probably experienced that slightly spine-chilling feeling at least once. Because cats have a very special ability. They often react to things humans don't notice at all. What fascinated me the most is that the more I researched, the more I realized cats don't behave randomly the way we often assume. When your cat suddenly stares at the ceiling, tilts its ears toward a wall, or abruptly turns its head, as if following something invisible, there's a good chance it's actually detecting signals your senses completely miss. It sounds a little like science fiction, but the truth is even more interesting. Cats can see far better in the dark than humans, hear frequencies your ears can't detect, sense tiny vibrations, and even perceive their environment in ways most of us rarely think about. Simply put, the cat sleeping on your sofa may actually be experiencing a completely different version of the world from yours. In today's video, I want to explore with you 11 strange things cats can see, hear, and sense that humans simply can't. And trust me, the final ability is the one that made me look at my own cat in a completely different way. After learning about it, every time I see my cat staring into a corner at 3 a.m., it no longer feels completely normal. Before we begin, I'm curious, has your cat ever done something that made you feel both amused and slightly creeped out? Leave a comment below and share your experience. Your furry boss might just be hiding a superpower you've never noticed before. Now, let's step into the secret sensory world of cats. I used to think I understood my cat pretty well, until one night around 2 a.m. The entire room was pitch black. I could barely see anything except a faint strip of light coming through the door. But my cat was a completely different story. It sat motionless on the edge of the bed, eyes wide open, staring down the hallway as if it had just discovered a top-secret national mystery. Then, without warning, it took off. A perfect leap through the darkness, dodging a chair, gliding past table legs, and disappearing behind the corner without bumping into a single thing. And me? If I tried the same thing, there's a very good chance I'd be explaining to a doctor the next day why I ran face first into my wardrobe. That moment made me realize a pretty impressive truth. Cats do not live in the same version of darkness that we do. A cat's vision is almost perfectly designed for hunting during dawn and dusk. Behind a cat's retina is a special reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum. It sounds a bit like a magic spell from a wizard movie, but its function is actually very practical. It reflects light that passes through the retina back for a second round, allowing the eyes to maximize every tiny bit of available light. In simple terms, cats basically have a built-in light recycling mode. That's why cat eyes glow in the dark, and why they can see far better than humans in low-light conditions. So if you've ever watched your cat sprint through the house at midnight like it's competing in the Olympic parkour finals, now you have your answer. It's not being reckless. It simply sees much better than you do. But what surprised me even more is that cats can also see part of the ultraviolet spectrum. This means a cat's world contains an extra layer of information that humans completely miss. Certain marks on surfaces, patterns on plants, and even biological traces left by small animals may appear much more clearly to cats. Imagine you're looking at a completely normal room. Meanwhile, your cat is looking at that exact same room, but with a secret filter enabled that only it has access to. This explains why cats sometimes sit and stare at the ceiling or an empty wall corner for long stretches of time. You see absolutely nothing. Your cat may actually be tracking floating dust in a beam of light, tiny insects, or subtle changes in brightness your eyes completely ignore. In other words, cats are not seeing ghosts. At least, science hasn't confirmed that yet. But they are definitely seeing far more than you think. And honestly, after learning this, every time my cat stares at a corner of the room at 3 a.m., I feel slightly less creeped out. Only slightly. Because let's be honest, if there's a creature in your house experiencing the world in an upgraded visual mode you can't access, feeling a little uneasy is pretty understandable. But this is only the visual part. The next ability is what really made me feel like I'm living with a tiny, furry radar system. In the next section, we'll talk about why cats can hear sounds you don't even know exist. If the last section made me realize cats see the world differently, this part is what truly convinced me I'm living with a creature that is perhaps a little too upgraded. Have you ever seen your cat peacefully sleeping, then suddenly snap awake like it just received a class-feed transmission? Ears up, eyes wide, head tilted at a perfect 45-degree angle like some kind of military radar. and then it stares intensely at a completely innocent wall. Meanwhile, you're standing there hearing absolutely nothing except the fan and the faint sound of your own anxiety starting to activate. I used to think cats only did this to make human life slightly creepier. Turns out, the real explanation is much more interesting. Humans can hear sounds up to about 20,000 hertz. Cats? Around 60,000 to 65,000 hertz. In other words, when you think a room is completely silent, your cat might actually be listening to an entire secret concert. Things like tiny insects moving in a corner, electronic buzzing from a phone charger, electricity running through wires inside the wall, mice in the ceiling, or noises from the apartment next door that you never even notice. To you, peaceful silence. To your cat, full bass remix. What's even more impressive is that cats don't just hear well, they hear with extreme precision. Each ear has more than 30 muscles, allowing it to rotate almost independently. So while you're still trying to figure out, wait, what was that sound? Your cat has already calculated where it came from, how far away it is, and whether it deserves further investigation. A cat's ears basically function like two built-in mini antennas. Honestly, if I had that ability, I'd probably act a little superior too. But wait, it gets even weirder. Some studies suggest cats are also sensitive to low-frequency vibrations below the normal human hearing range. These vibrations can happen before storms, weather changes, or other subtle environmental shifts. That may explain why cats sometimes become restless, pace around the house, or hide in strange places before heavy rain or storms arrive. Meanwhile, you're still casually thinking, nice weather today. And your cat is basically like, you have no idea what's coming. After learning this, I started taking my cat's random strange reactions a lot more seriously. It's not being paranoid. There's a very real chance it just picked up something your limited edition human ears were never designed to process. When you think about it, cats are honestly a little unfair. Better night vision, ultra-sensitive hearing, faster reflexes, and somehow they sleep 16 hours a day while still being considered adorable. That is an absurd number of privileges for a tiny creature whose favorite hobby is knocking objects off tables. But there's still another ability that surprised me even more. In the next section, we'll talk about how cats sense the world through their whiskers, temperature detection, and invisible signals you've probably never even considered. By this point, I was starting to understand why cats sometimes make us feel like we're living with a creature running on a completely different version of nature. Not just better vision, not just better hearing. Cats also come equipped with sensors humans barely even think about. Take whiskers, for example. For the longest time, I assumed cat whiskers only existed to make them look cuter and give the internet more content. Turns out, not even close. A cat's whiskers are actually an incredibly advanced sensory system. Each whisker is deeply rooted in a follicle packed with highly sensitive nerve endings. Even the smallest change in airflow can be enough for a cat to notice. In other words, cats don't always need to physically touch something to know their environment is changing. They can almost feel space itself. That's why cats often stand in front of a narrow gap for a few seconds, looking like they're calculating something deeply important. It may seem like they're contemplating the meaning of life, but really, they're just measuring whether their body can fit through that opening. Basically, a furry 3D scanner. And honestly, a very efficient one. Whiskers aren't the only impressive tool cats have. They're also extremely sensitive to temperature. Have you ever noticed that in an entire room, your cat will somehow locate the single warmest spot with terrifying accuracy? A laptop you just finished using, a patch of sunlight that appears for exactly 17 minutes every morning, the blanket you just stood up from, or you. Sometimes I genuinely wonder if my cat actually loves me, or if I'm simply a walking heating device that also pays for Wi-Fi. The truth is, cats have highly sensitive heat receptors, especially around their face and nose. This ability once helped their ancestors detect warm-blooded prey in low-light environments. Today, it's mostly used to identify the most strategically perfect nap location possible. Very practical. But the ability that impressed me the most is their sense of smell. A cat's sense of smell is dramatically stronger than ours, and they also have a special organ called the Jacobson's organ. This explains why you sometimes see a cat sniff something, then slightly open its mouth and freeze with a deeply confused expression. It's not malfunctioning. It's analyzing chemical information. Cats can detect scents, pheromones, and environmental signals in astonishing detail. To you, a room is just a room. To your cat, it's an entire information map. Who was here recently? Whether a new scent appeared? If the environment feels safe. In other words, your cat walks into a room like a tiny detective inspector. The more I learn about cats, the less mysterious they actually seem. They're not being weird for no reason. They're simply using sensory tools humans don't have access to. And that explains why so many cat behaviors look strange from our perspective but are completely logical in theirs. We're almost at the final section now, and next comes the part that has probably given every cat owner chills at least once. Why do cats stare intensely into empty space like they're watching something you absolutely cannot see? Before we move into the final section, I'm curious. What's the weirdest habit your cat has? Drop one cat behavior in the comments that has completely confused you. And if this video is helping you understand cats a little better, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the final part. And finally, we've reached the behavior that has probably given almost every cat owner chills at least once. The moment when your cat suddenly freezes. No meowing, no movement, just sitting completely still, eyes wide open, staring intensely at a completely empty corner of the room. No person, no obvious movement, no sound you can hear. Yet your cat is focused like it just discovered a secret humanity is not ready to know. I think every cat owner has experienced this moment at least once. And if it happens at around 3 a.m., congratulations, your imagination is now fully activated. I once followed my cat's stare for nearly 2 full minutes just to confirm one important fact. There was absolutely nothing there, at least according to the limited standards of human perception. But after looking into it more, I realized something much more interesting. When cats stare into empty space, most of the time they are not seeing anything supernatural. They're simply processing information you can't detect. A nearly invisible insect crawling across the ceiling, dust particles drifting through a beam of light, tiny sounds from electronic devices, vibrations inside the walls, or just subtle environmental changes small enough to trigger a cat's attention. In other words, cats aren't weird. They're just operating with a sensory system far beyond our default settings. And honestly, this made me realize something much more interesting than what cats can or cannot see. Just because you can't see, hear, or understand something doesn't mean it isn't there. Humans are often quick to jump to conclusions. There's nothing there. That makes no sense. That behavior is strange. But cats are a good reminder that every creature experiences the world through its own limitations. Reality is always bigger than the small slice we personally perceive. Your cat lives in the same house as you, follows roughly the same daily schedule, sleeps on the same couch, and occasionally steals your favorite spot with an unreasonable amount of confidence. But in reality, it is experiencing a completely different version of the world. Browder, more sensitive, more detailed. And maybe that's exactly what makes cats so fascinating. They are both adorable little fluff balls that sleep 16 hours a day and highly advanced biological sensor systems wrapped in soft fur. Honestly, kind of overpowered if you ask me. After learning all this, I've stopped thinking of cats as mysterious. They aren't mysterious because they're trying to be. They seem mysterious because they experience life in a way completely different from ours. And maybe that's a useful reminder for our own lives, too. Sometimes we should slow down a little before rushing to judge something just because we don't fully understand it yet. Maybe the issue isn't that something is irrational. Maybe you just haven't seen enough of it yet. What about your cat? What's the weirdest or funniest thing your cat has ever done? Leave one comment below. I'd genuinely love to read your stories. And if this video helped you understand cats a little better, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel so I can keep making more fun and fascinating videos like this in the future.